guys, and welcome to Money Talks News, the podcast. I'm your host, Stacey Johnson. I'm the founder of Money Talks News. And joining me is Kim Nguyen, my friend and colleague. Hey, Kim.
Hey, how are you doing, Stacey?
I am doing very, very well, thank you. It's 2 days after the election, and today we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to talk about 10 minutes. We're going to talk about 3 ways that Donald Trump, President-elect Trump, I should say, is going to change your money and your life. Let's start off with the stock market. Kim, I know that you're a stock investor because we talk about stocks all the time.
Yeah,
what are you thinking about the market? It was up 1,500 points yesterday. That's the Dow. It's up another, I think, 300 points today. What are you thinking? You like it?
It feels good. I think when the election results came in, a friend of mine asked me, just like, how you feeling? I'm like, my crypto is up. So, that's crazy awesome. On that respect, it's been interesting to see how much of an influence a Trump win has had on the
Why do you think that is?
Well, if we're just looking purely on the campaign trail, he had some major backers behind him, right? I think for me, I saw Elon Musk and Tesla, which is, part of the EV movement backing up there, and Twitter. He announced, his own crypto. So there's clear some range and some thoughts into that new space. And I think if from a just overarching historical side of things, I think, Republicans are always supportive of big business. So,
let's get specific. And in fact, if you look at what parts of the stock market went up yesterday, it's illustrative. Okay. For example, yesterday, the bank stocks, financial stocks screamed. The market went up 3%, bank stocks up 6%.
Wow.
And I would say bank, I mean financial, okay? Also, oil stocks went up a lot yesterday. Now, there should be something in common. I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you this, but let me just tell you that what do those two industries have in common? They're heavily regulated.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, Donald Trump is a champion of stripping away regulation. Okay, so this is one thing that accelerated the entire market, those two industries in particular, but lots of other ones as well. In fact, the renewable energy industry was trashed yesterday. So if you're making solar panels, you're not in good shape. But if you're pumping oil, you're a winner. Okay, so anyway, one of the reasons the market went up yesterday is because of deregulation. At least the hope of deregulation. Remember that President-elect Trump is not President Trump until January, but this is what the market's looking forward to. Now, and the other thing, which should be relatively obvious as well, and we're going to talk about this some more, is taxes. Trump wants to lower taxes for corporations from 21 to 15, I believe is what it is. And it looks like he's going to have support of Congress to be able to do that. As we speak right now, the House is still undecided, but it could be decided maybe even before this podcast is over. But even if the Democrats win the House, their majority is going to be this big. I mean, it's very, very slim. So the odds are good that Trump's going to be able to get through his economic agenda. And this is why the stock market's reacting the way it is.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense to me. I think given the corporate tax rate dropping, how does that come down to me, affect me as the average American?
Well, it affects you as a stockholder, first of all, because if corporations pay less taxes, well, they got more money to go to their bottom line.
Gotcha.
They're more profitable. So that's why these companies would become more valuable. And that obviously affects you, Kim, if you've got a 401k, or something like that in the stock market. And I know, as I said earlier, I know personally that you do invest in stocks, but it also taxes could come down. Certainly, I'll tell you what, I'm in a high income. I'm in the top tax bracket, and Trump's original the tax cuts that he did in 2017, I guess it was.
The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
Yeah,
right?
There you go. Thank you. It has saved me hundreds of thousands of dollars in income tax, hundreds of thousands. Now, so if you're a wealthy person, you're super happy about Trump being elected, especially relative to Harris, because Harris was going to raise taxes on the wealthy. That was one of her major planks in her platform. Trump is going to lower them. He also has promised to lower taxes for the middle class, but a little more indistinct. Not really sure exactly what he has in mind there. But that's one of the things that people are celebrating, both in the stock market and maybe as individuals too.
Yeah, that was my question on that. Like, I haven't heard anything from either side regarding the kind of the middle class, like regarding tax deductions.
Well, Harris had a lot of stuff that she was trying to promote for the middle class. But okay, here's a couple of things that Trump said about the middle class. He said he was going to not tax tips. That's a big thing for people in the middle or lower, lower income people and middle class people. Also, he said he was going to stop taxing Social Security.
Yeah.
That's a ton of people my age,
And overtime pay too, right?
Yep. Overtime pay as well. Yeah. So these are ways middle class taxes could get lowered. Now, whether any of this stuff comes to pass or not, one of the things we always have to say when we're talking about any politician is saying something and doing something are two different things.
Yeah.
And in fact, let's move on. I'm going to see where we are time-wise. Well, I can't tell. Anyway, let's move on from taxes to tariffs.
Got it.
Okay. Now, this is a really interesting thing to me because not just this election, but the last election, Trump was talking about, and he did put tariffs on a lot of Chinese goods. Not that there were tariffs before, but he strengthened those tariffs and he talked a lot about them. And what he said was he's going to take money from China and he's going to give it to the American people. In other words, the people who are selling us stuff are going to be paying tariffs. That's not true. That's just false.
Can I ask you a very dumb question? What is a tariff?
Okay, that's a good question. Thank you. Consider a tariff a tax.
Okay.
Okay. So, for example, you go to the store and you buy groceries. There's a sales tax, right?
Yeah.
So you've got the price of the item on the shelf, but then you also get to pay tax extra when you get to the checkout, and that goes to the state. Same exact thing here. You buy a car from Germany, and it costs $10,000. Buy a car from Germany, it probably costs more than $10,000. But anyway, let's say
I don't know what German car you're driving.
Anyway, let's say you do that though. Okay, now you pay $10,000 for the car in Germany, but when you get it here, when you go to pick it up, it costs you another extra grand because the government has a 10% tariff. See, like a tax,
right?
On that, and the reason why is the government putting on tariffs? Well, the government's putting on tariffs because maybe they're pissed that the Germans are they're not letting our cars in their country, or maybe they're giving them a discount. Maybe they're subsidizing cars in Germany so that they're cheaper for them to produce. That means our manufacturers of car here they're not playing on a level playing field. And so what the government tries to do is influence the direction of trade by putting on tariffs or removing tariffs. And what Trump has always said, and proper and correctly in some cases, was it ain't fair. And real example, the Chinese government was subsidizing the steel industry so that steel was cheaper for us to buy from China, even though think how much steel weighs, how much it costs, to get it from China to here. But it was so much less expensive that American car manufacturers and others like that were buying their steel from China. And so, but that's not fair. We have steel companies here, but they're not subsidized by the government. And so that's a perfectly nice or a good place for you to put in a tariff. It ain't fair. And so that's what Trump did, and that's what lots of presidents have done, and that's what tariffs are good for. Make sense?
Right. That does make sense. So what's the difference this time? Because, what he said and what you just mentioned, it was like, China's going to pay for these tariffs.
Yeah, but they're not. Well, I mean, theoretically, China could pay but the tariff by, going back to our example with Germany. The Germans could sell me that, knowing that I'm going to have to pay $1,000 tax. They may sell me that car for $9,000.
I see. Okay.
So now they may obviously they're taking a hit to their bottom line in order to get me to buy their car.
Got it.
And so the Chinese could do that. They could lower the price of stuff so the tariffs wouldn't matter. And that does happen to some extent when tariffs are involved. But what tariffs are supposed to do too, if it's so expensive for me to buy this German car, let's say it's 100% tariff, which actually is a tariff on Chinese cars. Now it's going to be way cheaper for me to build a manufacturing plant in the United States and build it here because no one can afford this Chinese car anymore. And that's another thing that tariffs are supposed to be doing. They're supposed to price other, our competitors out of the market, or overseas competitors out of the market, and encourage people to build factories here. And in fact, you might even have, and we have had, Japanese car companies have built manufacturing facilities in the United States in order to get closer to their market. And so, it's to encourage domestic production, basically, and to penalize partners. Now, what Trump has also said, though, was that he wants to put a 60% tariff on everything coming from China.
Wow.
And a 10 or 20% tariff on everything coming from everywhere else. Now, imagine paying 60% more for everything coming from China and 20% more for everything coming from everywhere else. Fruit from Brazil,
God.
Cars from Japan. I mean, it just goes on and on. Wine from France, And so you can see why, and we're going to talk about inflation in a moment, but you can see how this could be inflationary, and that's what people are freaked out about. Now, here's another thing, though. Trump is, shall we say, mercurial. He says stuff, right?
Yeah.
And maybe what he's doing is he's saying to China, I'm going to have a tariff of 60% on every single thing you try to sell this country. But maybe it doesn't mean that. Maybe because they know he might, who knows what this guy's going to do? He's a horse in a hospital.
I've never heard that. So
it's a very good comedy routine. Okay. Look it up after this. You will laugh. Okay. Anyway, John Mulaney. Anyway, he might do anything. So what are they likely to do? If I tell you, Kim, I'm going to cut your pay by 60%. You'd be like, holy crap, Stacey, don't do that.
Yeah.
You actually look shocked right now.
A little bit.
But what I'm doing is I'm setting you up. So then when I only cut your pay 10%, you're like, whew.
Yeah.
So maybe what he's doing is, blustering when he actually is just trying to get them to the table and get them to cooperate. Now, knowing Trump, I don't. And neither does anybody else. I have no idea what's in his head. But I'm just saying, maybe this giant tariff isn't as bad as it sounds like. Maybe it's just a negotiating tactic. We will have to wait and see.
Okay. So I get that. And you mentioned it earlier, this with tariffs and raising them, it is an inflationary, right? So let's talk inflation.
Yes. So
things have definitely gotten up in price, or at least it feels like it. When I go to the grocery store, when I'm getting gas, all those things. Yeah. What I'm hearing and what I've read is the Fed continues to basically reduce to a level that is supposed to lower inflation. Even to. I think as of this recording, they're putting up a vote, right? So,
to cut interest rates. Yes.
Yeah. So with that in mind, what is Trump's plans to also battle that? Battle inflation? Okay.
Let me I want to make a quick note about inflation before we continue. I wrote about this the other day. Inflation is coming down. It got as high as 9%, I believe, in 2022, largely because of the pandemic. But it's come down a lot. So now it's back to about where it was in 2020, about a little over 2%. And 2% is where the Fed likes it to be because they don't want to have deflation, which is falling prices. Right. And so, but when I tell people inflation's coming down, they say, nuh-uh, the eggs are still just as expensive as they were. Right. Well, the thing is, that's deflation. Prices aren't going to come down. They're going to stop going up by as much. That's when inflation's coming down. In other words, instead of going up 9%, it's going up 2%. But it ain't going to go back to where it was in 1940. Okay.
Right.
And the reason why you don't want deflation, it sounds good, but when you have deflation, what you end up doing is collapsing your economy. Why? Because why am I going to buy a car for $10,000 today if I can get it for $9,500 tomorrow? So people stop buying stuff, your economy goes off a cliff, and bringing it back is really, really difficult. Whereas taming inflation, rising prices, is relatively easy. And so that's why inflation is not as bad as people think it is. And certainly not as bad as it was portrayed to be on the campaign trail.
Right. That makes way more sense to me because I was hoping, eggs would go down to $1.
Yeah.
But
we all hope that.
Yeah.
But, if you see prices on everything falling really fast, head for the hills. Buy a shotgun and canned goods.
Okay.
That may be an exaggeration, but I mean, you don't want to see deflation. You want to see inflation not going up more than a couple of percent. And that's basically where we are now. So if Trump doesn't do anything, and of course, knowing him, he'll say, well, I tamed inflation. Well, inflation's already tamed. However, he can make it worse. How? Tariffs. for one. I mean, if everything you buy is more expensive, and by the way, who do you think this hurts the most? Poor people or rich people?
Poor people.
Yeah, of course. If the price of everything goes up, it's obviously more difficult for poor people simply because they use more of their income, a larger share of their income in order to meet their daily needs. Okay, so now also having taxes go down can be inflationary too. Because if you've got more money to spend, then you've got more dollars chasing fewer goods, and that can be inflationary as well. Not nearly as bad an effect as tariffs could be, but that could also be inflationary.
Okay, so with all these things in mind, right? We talked about how it's going to affect my money and my life. What should I be doing now, either get ready or just to hold tight? What are your thoughts, Stacy?
Well, I can tell you what I'm doing right now, and that's not a damn thing.
Okay.
I mean, I've been taking it. I wish I'd put more money in the market before the election. And by the way, another thing that's making the market go up too, and would have had the same effect on a Harris victory, is that uncertainty. Because I mean, hey, we were all thinking, not maybe all of us thinking, but wouldn't have been a huge shock if there was violence after this election.
Right.
And it could have carried on for weeks or months, right? So that's another reason the stock market is sigh of relief. Mm-hmm. Anyway, what I'm doing is not a thing. I'm keeping my stocks where they are, and I'm happy about that. And also, as far as interest rates go, I have a lot of money in money markets, and interest rates have been going up. And by the way, keep an eye on the bond market. Even if you're not a bond buyer, and I assume, Kim, at your age, you're not.
Oh.
But if you look at the Treasury market, and you can do that on CNBC, any number of websites, just look up what the 2 years doing and the 5 year and the 10-year Treasuries are doing. And that's going to tell you where interest rates are going. And the reason I mention that is because if interest rates are anticipating inflation, and also we've got a huge deficit, which neither candidate addressed at all. And what happens when you have deficits, when the government's spending more than it makes, it's borrowing money, and the amount of interest it's paying on that debt is, if it hasn't surpassed yet, it's about to surpass the amount of money we spend on Social Security and defense. I mean, it's getting huge, the amount of money that we're spending just on carrying this debt. So anyway, keep an eye on interest rates. And the reason I say that is because the stock market can keep going up, and it should. We've got a great economy. Like I said at the outset of this, Trump inherited a great economy. Nothing is wrong with it at all. It's growing. The inflation rate is back down to where it was, and the unemployment rate is near a historical low. It's a great economy. But if interest rates keep going up, then that means that's going to hurt stocks. High interest rates are bad for stocks. And why is that? Because if I can earn 5% in money market with no risk whatsoever, why would I buy into an overpriced stock market?
Right.
So that's why even if you're not a bond investor, keep an eye on interest rates.
Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. I like you said, I'm not even looking at bonds right now. So
I just bought my first bond, a couple of years ago when rates went up. But I still have a lot of money in the money market. I'm going to be kind of sorry to see interest rates drop. But let me also tell you this. Interest rates aren't going back to nothing. They're not.
Yeah.
Because of the size of the deficit and because of the unwillingness of either party to really substantially address it, that's going to crowd out. I mean, the government's borrowing so much money that they have to keep paying higher and higher interest rates, or else no one will lend them money. So that's going to keep a lid on lower rates rather. So you're going to have higher rates, I think. I'm not saying higher. They're going to go lower. In fact, they're probably being dropped as we speak. But, like 4%. They're not going to go back down to zero. They may go as low as 3% for short term, or for short term borrowings. But they're not going to go back to zero like they were. Mm-hmm. And that's good news if you're a saver.
Yeah.
But just watch, if interest rates keep going up too much, it's going to hurt the stock market.
Got it. That's good to know.
Any other questions? I don't know. I can't get my stopwatch. I have no idea how long we've been on.
I think you gave me a clear path. That's don't do anything right now.
Yeah.
Hold tight. Tomorrow's another day. It doesn't sound so scary, actually.
Yeah. And the world has always been a scary place.
Yeah.
It's never not been. And this may feel particularly scary to some people. In fact, I would hazard a guess to say to a lot of people that the world seems like a scary place now. But I can tell you many, many times in my long, long life that the world has seemed a scary place. And the idea is just keep on keeping on. If you're doing dollar cost averaging, keep doing it. And don't freak out too much. Do pay attention, though. That's what will make you money.
Well, thank you, Stacy, for your time.
You betcha. And with that, I guess I'm sure we've talked for at least 10 minutes. So we'll go ahead and sign off. Folks, make sure that you follow us on, first of all, you subscribe to the Money Talks newsletter. You follow us on YouTube. You follow us on social media. What are we on social media, Kim?
We are on pretty much everything. Facebook, Instagram, X, parentheses, Twitter. And if you really want to get in touch, you can also find us on LinkedIn if you really want to go there.
Yeah, and if you want to talk to me, hello at moneytalksnews.com. You can just send us an email anytime.
And Stacy is very, very active on our Facebook Money Talks News retirement group, so find us there as well.
Look, we're just everywhere, Kim.
Yeah, we are.
That's amazing. Hey, you guys have a great day. We're going to see you right here next time.
Thanks.